Stephen Curtis Chapman. This, if you haven't noticed yet, guys, what is Tuesday? What is Tuesday? Valentine's Day. Now, the funny thing with Valentine's Day, the funny thing with Valentine's Day is first of all, poor Sue, her birthday is the 13th, and Valentine's Day is on the 14th, so she always gets gypped. I'd be the first to admit it. You know, not this year. I tried to make up this year for my failings of past years. But I have always kind of said of Valentine's Day, and this does sound terrible. It's like, well, Christmas is over, the card sales are down, gift sales are down. So what are we going to do in February? Let's make Valentine's Day and get guys in trouble when they don't buy stuff. Here's the thing, though, and that's just me. Don't take that as a. But I will tell you guys, I would strongly suggest, because you do get in trouble. Remember, Tuesday is Valentine's Day. And I can tell you, Walmart has flowers. It's not super expensive. Gifts, cards. Get yourself out of trouble. I'm just used to being there. I put myself there, so I know it's me. I put myself there. I get it. Don't make my same mistakes. I do want to mention real quickly, I didn't earlier, because I didn't think about it. Just kind of give you an update, and then we're going to dive into our sermon. I mentioned 2 weeks ago about my mom. They were kind of evaluating where she is, with her treatment. My mom is now in hospice. My mom is dying. She's dying quickly. It's not. And the reason I bring this up, because I told you about it, and it was kind of a loose end. Particularly when we're talking about this Sunday and next Sunday, we're going to be talking about love. We have people in our church who I'm not going to be naming names or pointing any attention anywhere, because I don't want anybody to feel like they're being looked at. But we have a husband in this church whose wife is in hospice. I need you to lift this guy up in prayer. Because I can tell you, and I appreciate this now that I've been walking through this. I just went through this with my dad in May, and I'm going through with my mom. There's nothing harder than seeing somebody you love a whole lot in a very bad place and wasting away. We have another husband here that I know that's been dealing with, his wife has a lot of medical issues. You need to keep these guys lifted up. Why is it important? Because I'm going to be talking about guys and their commitment to their wives based out of Ephesians 5. These are men who have stood the test of time. These men have been with their wives and have been with them in their darkest hours, and these are godly men. So there's something to be said for that. So please keep these guys in your prayers. Bacon or eggs? Or eggs or bacon? Which I messed it up through the slides. Thankfully, Chris called it. My first slide, I put bacon of eggs, and he called it, and I didn't, so he was able to fix my PowerPoint. But bacon, eggs or bacon, which are you? And I'm going to explain this. When you look at Ephesians 5:21 through 27, you might be able to put this together without me actually preaching on it. But I'm going to explain it, so don't feel bad if you don't understand where I'm going with this right away. First of all, Ephesians 5:21. Ephesians 5 is probably the passage of the Bible that gets most preachers in trouble with women. Because it talks about submission here. However, before it gets to 22, which talks specifically to the woman, Ephesians 5:21, catch this. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So does this submission thing, does it go both ways? We love to talk about us men. We love to talk about, the wife needing to submit to the husband. But does this go both ways? What's Paul say? Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So I can assure you that men, you need to, and I'll get into this in more detail later, you need to listen to the things that your wife is saying. Because it's just not a situation where it's a one-way thing where we're the boss and they're not. Submit one to another. The Bible is telling husbands and wives together, lean in each other, listen to one another, pay attention to what each of you are saying, weigh heavily what each other is saying. I think we as the church, I'm not talking about Shenandoah Valley Baptist. I know I have to clarify this a lot. I'm talking about the church in general. That us guys, we really like to, look at ourselves as the boss. We're the man. We the man. Absolutely. What I say goes because I'm the man. Well, Paul's saying that slow your roll there, buddy. Slow your roll there, Skippy. You need to be listening to her as well. And I'm not making a lot of eye contact here because I know Sue's like, he better be listening to what he's saying himself. Hey, I'm not perfect. Everything I preach about is because I'm jacking it up myself. Or I have messed it up at some point myself. I, as a preacher, never stand up here to talk shame on you. Almost every single one of my sermons is because I've made the mistake. I've done it. I've been there myself. We are fellow travelers on this road. Ephesians 5:22 through 24 does say this: the wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Why is this a hard thing? Why is it that ladies may struggle with submitting to their husband's spiritual authority? This goes back to the fall. What was part of the curse when it came to women? God talked about things that were going to happen to the man, things that were going to happen to the woman, things that were going to happen to the serpent. Part of the thing with the woman was that she was going to resist that authority because she would not want to have that authority over her. But here's the thing, godly women, and again, this sermon gets so many guys in trouble for preaching it. But the Bible does call wives to submit to the biblical authority that Christ has given the husband. But we're going to get to the husband. Don't think for a second, trust me, what Paul has to say to the man is way worse than what he has to say to the woman. However, God has set the family unit just the same way that he set up the church unit. Just as Jesus is the head of the church, in the family unit, the husband is the head of the wife. Yes, and it's always really quiet when you say that. It's not me, though. It's Paul. If you're going to get mad at anybody, get mad at Paul. But it's true. But we're going to look at something, and this is where it gets really tough. This is the stuff that gets really overlooked. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. What is that first part? Husbands, mind you, this follows right after Paul says that wives are to submit to their husbands. He then says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. What does that mean? What does that mean? To love your wife the same way that Christ loved the church. What did Jesus do? Did Jesus ever put himself first in front of his church? Before you answer that, this is the same Jesus that shortly after the last meal, the last Passover meal, he washed the feet of his disciples. The same Jesus who lowered himself to the position, foot washers in his day were the lowest of the servants. There was no job lower in the culture or the time than to wash somebody's feet. But Jesus, the head of the church, lowered himself to wash the feet of those he loved. Husbands, what application does that have for you? The application it has for you is that you are to put your wives first, even above yourself. How else did Jesus love the church? Everything Jesus did, he did to glorify his Father and to serve his church that he was establishing. Everything he did. He lived a sinless life. He gave it all up. He was homeless the last 3 years of his life because he was traveling from place to place to place. He did all of this for the benefit of his church. Would it have been easier for him just to hang out in Nazareth for another 10 years, making stuff and hanging out with his Ema, his mom? It would have been a lot easier. But he didn't do it because everything he did was to glorify his Father and to serve the church. So husbands, everything that you do is to do what? You need to glorify your Father in heaven and to serve your wife. Ouch. But here's the thing with loving your wife the same way the same way Jesus loves his church. Let's go back to this biblical submission thing, the wife submitting to the husband. Wives, and you're allowed to answer this, if your husband is loving you and caring for you and taking care of you the same way that Jesus takes care of his church, would it be easier for you to submit to them? Yes. Ephesians 5 is definitely, it puts a heavy burden on the ladies to submit to their husbands, but it puts an even heavier burden on the man to love their wife in the same way and in the same fashion as Christ loves his church. You want to know what? A lot of other things in society would be fixed if men loved their wives the way Christ loves his church. When you look at juvenile delinquency, mind you, kids are naturally rebellious. They just are. You can have good kids that do stupid things. They're young, they're learning. They think they're adults, they will rebel. However, there is a whole group of children in America and across this world who find themselves in trouble because they don't have a father that loved their mother the way that Christ loved the church. Jesus didn't divorce his church. He should have, in my opinion. We did nothing but hurt him. We did nothing but spit on him. We did nothing but kill him. But he never divorced his church. If we as men would stand up and love our wives in the same way, there would be way fewer single-parent homes. Does that matter? That absolutely matters. Statistics tell us the families where the children grow up with just one parent, they have a propensity, they have a tendency to go the wrong direction. Is that the rule? It doesn't always happen. There are kids that have been in single-parent homes that have turned out great. Don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm saying. But it makes the road to hoe so much more difficult and rocky for the kid if they don't have a father to show them how to be a father. It makes the road so much more difficult for a girl who does not have a man to show them how a man should treat them. You know what? My youngest daughter, we've gone to the movies together since she's been married. What's really cool, she treated me out. It was to see Star Wars, one of the Star Wars movies. It's like, yes, I raised that kid right. We as husbands and fathers need to not blow over Ephesians chapter 5 and just stop at verse 24. It says, you need to listen to me. I'm the man. I'm the man of this household. I'm the boss. You need to keep reading 25, 26, and 27 because the burden is even heavier on you. Families are falling apart because men aren't being men in the church and their families. Love your wife the way Christ loved the church. Do I stink at this sometimes? I absolutely stink at this sometimes. I know. I do. But don't blow this off. Don't look at this as some obscure little passage tucked away in one of the letters written by Paul. Because so much is what is broken in marriages, and so much what is broken in families, and so much that is broken in society. I'm telling you, I worked the road for 20 years as a cop, 12 years as a medic. I have seen with my own eyes the horrific things that happen in people's lives when men aren't men. You know, every gangbanger I ever arrested that was a teenager, none of them had a father in the home. I can't think of one. I can't think of one. Men, we have failed. We as men have failed in many ways. But I thank God there has been a line drawn in the sand. I was just mentioning 2 men here today. There are men in this church that have stood up and have drawn that line in the sand and have honored their wives in that way. 2 of them are here today. 2 of them have walked through with their wives through thick and thin. What are these vows we talk about when we get married? Rich or poor, sickness and health, till death do us part. We have men in this church that are doing just that. I encourage those of us who are dropping the ball to pick up the ball and go. I encourage any woman in this place who has resisted that biblical authority to pick up the ball and go with it. Every man who has not put his wife first, over his own wants, his own needs, over his whatever, pick up the ball and go with it. It doesn't matter how many times in the past you've messed it up. Today you can start to do the right thing. You can do the right thing starting the day. What does Ephesians 5 through 27 not say? It does not say, husbands, lord over your wives. It is not a dictatorship. It's not. I have seen very drastic examples of where men have been that very way. You're going to do what I say because I'm the man. I say that almost flippantly and funny earlier, but there are people who view their marriage in that way. Husbands, do whatever you want to do in spite of your wife. Remember to submit one to another. The Bible doesn't tell you, husbands, just to do whatever the heck you want because you want to do it. You have to guard the heart of your wife. God has called you to guard the heart of your wife. God has called you to put her above yourself. God has called you to listen to what she has to say. When the final decision comes on something, does the husband have that authority? Yes. But if you are submitting to her and loving her, she is going to accept your decision because she knows why you're looking out for her best interest. Even if she thinks it's wrong. And I've made some wrong decisions. She will go along out of reverence of her Jesus. And because she knows that even if she thinks you're missing the boat, that you're still looking out for her. It does not say, husbands, view your wives as the weaker one, who is not your equal. Man, if you think that the woman is the weaker one, let me tell you something. When I was a medic, I helped deliver a baby. I've seen a few babies be delivered when I was a medic. If you think the woman is the weaker one, you've never seen a baby be born. I can see it now. I came into church this morning. Man, my neck was killing me. I'm like turning like this because I don't know if I slept wrong or I am just under a little stress. Don't know what it was. Talking to Tim, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I got Voltaren cream in my bag. I'm like rubbing Voltaren cream on my neck. It's like, oh, this thing on my neck is killing me. Let me tell you what, if you've ever seen a baby be born, that sore muscle, oh, it's not even in the same ball game. I remember being there thinking, oh my gosh. I'll tell you what, it brings things into perspective. I've heard women say, and I have to say that I probably don't disagree with it. Well, we had to bear the babies because it would just kill the men. It's probably true. That would probably kill me. It killed me just watching it. I mean, it was not pleasant. I think about the days before modern medicine. Oh my goodness, they'd go out by a tree, have their baby, pick it up, and just go and finish chopping wood. You know, it's just like, men, the women are not a weaker part of you. You know what's really interesting? You know, when we look at kind of the original languages and stuff, and we look at Genesis, you know, we look at this description of God taking a rib from Adam, and it kind of built Eve around this rib. When you look in the original language, there's a different concept here. It's not just a physical piece of the person. The idea is that God took Eve out of Adam, period. So what does that mean? Why are men and women so drastically different? Because before Eve, Adam had it all. He had his masculine characteristics, he had feminine characteristics. He had strength, he could probably arrange flowers, who knows? But when God took Eve out of Adam, some attributes stayed with her, some attributes stayed with him. It's kind of the purpose behind the men being hunters and gatherers. And while we only think at one thing at a time, if you throw 3 things at us, you just completely derail us. And it's why women, you can mention 10 things, and they're computing all 10 of them at the same time. I don't get it. But here's the beautiful thing about marriage. And this is one of the purposes behind marriage. Now you're taking these characteristics that were in the woman, these characteristics that were in the man, and guess what you're doing? You're putting them back together. You have them functioning again, together. Why does one need to submit to the other? It's because men need to grasp the understanding of emotions that they will gather from women. Women need to be able to draw from that, the thing from men, the practical thing. They work together, submit one to the other. The wife is not the weaker one. She has a different role. That's it. She has a different role. You know, at work, Bruce preached last Sunday. He's the chief. I'm the number 2 guy. I'm the lieutenant. We both have a lot of years. We've both done a lot of stuff. But even though when we look at things and we try to decide how to solve things, being number 2 does not make me weaker than Bruce, but it puts me still in a position of submission. When I submit in that way, things get solved. When we put our heads together and we come together and we talk about things and we solve things. That's the same thing that's going on in the family unit. The husbands and the wives, different perspectives coming together. You are truly equals. Let me tell you. And I have seen men who like the step 2 or 3 steps ahead of their wives. I've seen this. I'm not making this stuff up. They don't get it. They don't get it. When you love your wife the way Christ loves the church, families will stay together. Sons will grow up watching husbands who know how to treat their wife. Daughters will grow up and see how a man should treat a woman. Why do so many young girls fall in the grips of these power-hungry guys that want to own them and to control them and to control every breath? Because they didn't have a father that showed them that's wrong. Don't take that stuff. Daughters need to see that. They need to see a strong husband and a father that says, don't take that stuff. Don't marry that guy. Don't settle. You are a princess. You are a princess of the king. You are my princess. Daughters need to see that. Sons need to see, I'm not going to treat a woman that way because my daddy would have whooped me if I talked to mama that way. They need to understand. Boys need to understand how to communicate and to be with a woman in a respectful way. Again, don't get me wrong. There have been some single mamas that have pulled off what I consider almost the impossible act. I've seen single mamas raise kids that are just in the fear and the admonition of the Lord and respectful kids. But the burden shouldn't be hers to bear. It should be the burden of both the man and the woman. It should be the burden of the husband and the wife. Once you start loving each other and submitting in this way, you will see changes in the way that you run in your family. You will see change. You will see less divorce. You will see less brokenness. You will see juvenile delinquency start to decline. I'm telling you, it's true. Eggs or bacon? Philippians 2, 5-7. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being of the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Even though there's equality among husbands and wives, Jesus did not take equality with God. He didn't take advantage of it. Men, don't take that biblical authority and take advantage of it. Jesus humbled himself to a servant. So what's this bacon and egg then? What level of sacrifice are you called to make? Ladies, you're kind of like a chicken. Chickens sacrifice eggs, a piece of themselves. So it's kind of like, it could be a painful thing, I would imagine, having an egg. If it's anything like having a baby, I'm telling you what, that was woo. But if a woman is if she's called to be eggs or to sacrifice the eggs, what's the guy? Man, you're called to be the bacon. Women are called to sacrifice. Men are called to sacrifice everything. The egg is a little sacrifice. The bacon is a big sacrifice. You know, I'm a Nicholas Sparks guy. I'm surprised. Some of you that probably wouldn't surprise you. But in his book or his movie, I like his movies more than his books because I got enough reading that's not, Nicholas Sparks. But Ira Levinson, he's a guy in the story, and he's talking about his life with his wife and the sacrifice that he made. In Nicholas Sparks' book, Ira says, love requires sacrifice. You cannot love without sacrifice. Two go together. The two go together. In fact, right now, we're going to demonstrate how love requires sacrifice. Jesus loves us. He loves his church. He loves you as individuals. Just like the bacon, the pig and the bacon. Jesus sacrificed everything. He gave up his life. He gave up his body. He did a hard thing. And as our deacons come forward, we'll get ready to pass out the emblems of the sacrifice of Christ.